The Justice Department just dropped what might be the biggest government disclosure in recent memory. And the gap between what's actually sitting in these files and what the public assumes is there, that gap is explosive. Pay attention to this because the Epstein files have taken over every corner of the internet.
Today, we are producing more than 3 million pages, including more than 2,000 videos and 180,000 images. In total, that means that the department produced approximately 3.5 million pages in compliance with the Act. Just a quick note about the videos and images. The 2,000 videos and 180,000 images are not all videos and images taken by Mr. Epstein or someone around him. They include large quantities of commercial pornography and images that were seized from Epstein's devices, but which he did not take or that someone around him did not take.
Conspiracy theories are running rampant, accusations are flying, and speculation is off the charts. Here's the reality. January 30th, 2026 marked the release of more than 3 million additional document pages, accompanied by over 2,000 video files and 180,000 photographs tied to the Jeffrey Epstein case. We're looking at something massive here. The final delivery required by the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which became law under President Trump in November 2025. Here's what's wild about this. Instead of providing closure, this massive dump is generating even more questions. That's the angle we're diving into right now. Think about what crosses your mind when someone says Epstein Files. You're probably picturing a client roster, correct? A definitive list naming influential figures who committed crimes? The evidence that finally exposes the elite class? Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche shattered those expectations at Friday's briefing. He stated unequivocally, no such roster exists.
The department's collection effort resulted in more than 6 million pages being identified as potentially responsive, including department and FBI emails, interview summaries, images, videos, and various other materials collected and generated during the various investigations and prosecutions that the Act covered. We erred on the side of over-collection of materials from various sources to best ensure maximum transparency and compliance, which necessarily means that the number of responsive pages is significantly smaller than the total number of pages initially collected. That's why I mentioned a moment ago we're releasing more than 3 million pages today and not the 6 million pages that we collected. I want to address what we didn't produce.
Federal investigators found zero substantiated evidence that Epstein kept any kind of client database or wielded it as leverage. Let me walk you through what actually went down. Justice Department officials gathered roughly 6 million document pages pulled from 5 distinct sources. The collection spans the Florida prosecution of Epstein, the New York criminal case against him, the New York prosecution of Ghislaine Maxwell, his partner in crime, the investigation surrounding Epstein's 2019 death, a Florida proceeding involving Epstein's former household employee, numerous FBI case files, plus the Inspector General's probe into the circumstances of Epstein's death while in federal detention. Over 500 legal professionals and analysts were deployed to review this mountain of material. The DOJ's official position? When you combine the latest batch with previous disclosures, the total sits at 3.5 million pages. Inside, you'll find FBI witness interview summaries called 302 reports from individuals claiming victimization, electronic communications, legal filings, photographs, and substantial amounts of what Blanche characterized as mainstream adult content recovered from Epstein's electronic devices. A portion of this visual material was created by Epstein and his circle, while other content was not. Hold on, this is where things get really fascinating. Federal officials acknowledged identifying 6 million potentially relevant pages during their search process. Only around 3.5 million are seeing daylight. Where did the remaining 2.5 million pages go?
The categories of documents withheld include those permitted under the Act to be withheld, files that contain personally identifiable information of victims or victims' personal and medical files, and similar files, the disclosure of which would constitute a clearly unwarranted invasion of personal privacy. Any depiction of CSAM or child pornography was obviously excluded. Anything that would jeopardize an active federal investigation. And finally, anything that depicts or contain images of death, physical abuse, or injury, also not produced. Although the Act allows for withholding for items necessary to keep secret in the interest of national security or foreign policy, no files are being withheld or redacted. on that basis.
According to the department, the withheld content breaks down into distinct buckets, identical copies pulled from separate investigations, material having nothing to do with either the Epstein or Maxwell prosecutions that got scooped up accidentally, files containing illegal imagery of minors that cannot be publicly distributed under any circumstances, plus records being protected to preserve victim anonymity and legal protections. But listen, plenty of people aren't accepting this rationale. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer took the Senate floor to press for clarity. His questions hit hard. Does the release contain every co-conspirator memorandum, every corporate protection document, the complete Palm Beach Police Department investigative files? Are we seeing full disclosure on each of the 10 suspected Epstein accomplices referenced in the paperwork? Then he posed the question, setting the internet ablaze. Did they release literally every page mentioning Trump by name? Get this. Blanche made a major point of declaring that the White House exercised absolutely no control over redaction decisions. His exact words were, "Let me be clear, the White House wasn't involved in the review process, had no supervisory authority over it, and gave zero direction about review methodology, search parameters, or what should be concealed." He went further, stating explicitly, "We did not protect President Trump." The story keeps building from there. Trump's name does appear in the files. A spreadsheet briefly vanished from the DOJ's website before being restored. It summarizes tips phoned into the FBI's National Threat Operations Center. Multiple entries reference both Epstein and Trump, though the records emphasize these were unconfirmed reports, including anonymous submissions and hearsay accounts. DOJ officials acknowledged pursuing certain leads while dismissing others as lacking credibility. Trump maintains his innocence and faces no criminal charges connected to Epstein. Trump's far from the only major figure showing up in these records. The files expose email threads between Epstein and Elon Musk, dated December 2013, about possible visits to Epstein's private Caribbean property. One Google Calendar appointment literally reads Elon Musk to Island Deck 6th, with matching schedule notations. Musk has consistently stated he never set foot on that island, and that Epstein's invitations were declined.
I want to talk for just a moment about the redactions that will be obvious to anyone who reviews the materials that we just produced today. In addition to the documentary redactions, which includes personal identifying information, victim information, and other privileges, there is extensive redactions to images and videos. To protect victims, we redacted every woman depicted in any image or video, with the exception of Ms. Maxwell. We did not redact images of any men, unless it was impossible to redact the woman without also redacting the man. To this end, though, and to ensure transparency, if any member of Congress wishes to review any portions of the responsive production in any unredacted form, they're welcome to make arrangements with the department to do so, and we're happy to do that.
Current Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick's name surfaces too, with correspondence indicating talks about a Caribbean island visit in December 2012. The Commerce Department's response emphasized Lutnick's minimal contact with Epstein, always with his spouse present, and stressed no misconduct allegations exist. Additional high-profile individuals referenced include Bill Gates, appearing in a draft message where Epstein allegedly mentions affairs outside marriage. The Gates Foundation rejected these allegations entirely. Cordial email exchanges between British entrepreneur Richard Branson and Epstein are documented. Records indicate Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the former Prince Andrew, extended a Buckingham Palace invitation to Epstein in 2010 plus, organized a private meal during Epstein's London trip. Let's talk about why this carries such weight. Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act with massive cross-party backing, and it became law November 19, 2025. The legislation mandated DOJ disclosure of all non-classified materials within 30 days, making December 19 the hard deadline. That initial December drop delivered under 10,000 pages, heavily censored, with entire documents completely blacked out. The response from both political parties was immediate fury. Representative Thomas Massie shared an image of the statute's text on social media, drawing attention to the 30-day requirement. Senator Rand Paul branded the incomplete release a serious error. The law explicitly required complete disclosure by December 19th, yet here we sit 42 days past deadline, finally receiving the bulk of content. Representative Rawkana, one of the bill's co-authors, pointed out that the DOJ acknowledging 6 million potentially applicable pages while releasing only 3.5 million creates legitimate concerns about what's being concealed. In his words, holding back these files merely protects powerful, connected individuals and damages public faith in our governmental structures. Public response. Absolutely explosive. Schumer challenged the DOJ on inconsistent figures, noting they claimed 6 million pages collected but 3 million released. He demanded explanation for the missing 3 million pages. Representative Robert Garcia labeled it shocking and deeply troubling that roughly half the documentation might be permanently withheld. There's another dimension to consider. 20 women identifying as Epstein survivors released a joint statement condemning the disclosure approach. Their position: this is marketed as openness, but functionally, it exposes survivors. Their statement declared survivors continue having their identities and personal details made public, while the men who victimized us stay hidden behind protection. This is unacceptable. They noted that despite Virginia Roberts Giuffre identifying numerous abusers within Epstein's network, the DOJ still hasn't revealed complete information about who facilitated Epstein's operation, who participated in the abuse, and who's been shielded from consequences. This highlights a crucial disconnect between file contents and public expectations. The documents include FBI victim interview transcripts, some containing extensive descriptions of the coordinated network utilizing private aircraft and multiple properties to enable systematic abuse. There's a 56-page draft criminal indictment from mid-2000 showing Florida prosecutors preparing charges against Epstein, covering dozens of counts, including sex trafficking, minor enticement, and conspiracy prosecution that never materialized. Flight manifests, estate photographs, electronic correspondence exposing his social network, and appointment calendars documenting meetings and travel are all present. What's absent from the files per the DOJ? Any master database of client abusers, blackmail archives, conclusive criminal evidence against prominent names appearing in correspondence and photographs. Blanche conceded there exists a thirst for information that I do not think will be satisfied through the DOJ's disclosure. This is precisely where conspiracy theories accelerate dramatically. Within mere hours of the December disclosure, more than a dozen files vanished from justice.gov without explanation. Among the disappeared items, file IFTA 0000468, a photograph depicting Trump, Epstein, and Maxwell together. Schumer seized on this, arguing if they'll remove that, imagine what else they're suppressing. The DOJ subsequently explained the photo was pulled out of an abundance of caution for additional review before being restored 1 day later. The redaction strategy is triggering intense examination. According to DOJ policy, every female shown in imagery or video received redaction except Ghislaine Maxwell for victim protection purposes. Male subjects weren't redacted unless removing the female from frame was technically impossible without also obscuring the male. Certain documents are entirely obliterated. 182-page psychological evaluation of Epstein contains 81 completely redacted pages. A 7-page file was fully redacted, then seemingly pulled from the website entirely. Blanche justified redactions by explaining the department issued explicit guidance, limiting redactions strictly to victim and family protection. Certain adult content received redaction because departmental policy treats all females in such material as victims. He stressed that prominent individuals and political figures received no special redaction treatment in any released files. The political dimensions cannot be ignored. This represents Trump's own Justice Department, releasing materials about someone Trump previously described as a friend, though they had a split roughly 2 decades back. The historical connection remains. The transparency legislation emerged from enormous pressure by Trump's political base demanding openness. That identical base now questions whether complete honesty is being delivered. Democratic opposition is capitalizing on the inconsistencies. They're pushing for explanations about shifting page counts, files disappearing then reappearing, extensive redaction rationale, and critically, what content fills those 2.5 million unreleased pages. Republicans who championed the transparency statute are equally frustrated, with several characterizing the phased rollout as violating congressional intent.
Allowed us to withhold documents if there were ongoing criminal investigations. That's one of the 4 reasons. I wanted to make clear with respect to any national security information that we were not withholding. There's not some tranche of super secret documents about Jeffrey Epstein that we're withholding. We're actually not withholding
roll
anything
out
based
as
on,
violating
NDI.
congressional intent. Survivors find themselves trapped in the middle, re-victimized through exposure of identifying details while watching potentially protective treatment of powerful figures. Representative Julie Johnson characterized the gradual file release not as transparency but as deliberate concealment. What's the actual truth here? Are we witnessing legitimate transparency or strategic narrative control? The DOJ maintains full compliance with statutory requirements and release of all legally mandated material. Their explanation: unreleased content consists of duplicate records, irrelevant documentation, legally unpublishable material, and victim-identifying details requiring protection. Opposition voices argue the extensive redactions, blown deadline, fluctuating page totals, and mysteriously appearing, then disappearing files collectively suggest something darker, calculated efforts to shape the narrative while shielding powerful interests. Here's what stands beyond dispute: Jeffrey Epstein orchestrated a complex network, exploiting young women and girls. He maintained connections with extraordinarily powerful and influential global figures. His collaborator Ghislaine Maxwell is currently serving a 20-year federal sentence. Epstein's 2019 death in federal custody was officially ruled suicide, but continues generating widespread skepticism. The public now possesses access to millions of investigative document pages detailing his criminal activities and extensive connections. Whether these files ultimately produce accountability for additional participants remains uncertain. The DOJ position: if evidence surfaces showing others abuse victims, prosecution will follow. Thus far, 0 new indictments have emerged from this enormous disclosure. These documents will undergo scrutiny by researchers, media professionals, and interested citizens for months and years ahead. Fresh discoveries will likely emerge, additional questions will surface, the push for complete transparency will persist. This narrative is nowhere near finished. What's your take on this disclosure? Is the DOJ operating with genuine transparency or executing a sophisticated cover-up? Does releasing 3.5 million pages meet the public's demand for truth? Or do those missing 2.5 million pages prove concealment is happening? Drop your perspective in the comment section. Make sure you're subscribed because we'll track every emerging development as this story continues unfolding. The Epstein files will remain in public focus, just like the fundamental questions they generate about power structures, justice, and accountability throughout America.